Hello again, thank you for joining me for another video. So today we are talking about synchronicity, and more specifically, how do you coax a soul into bloom? I think a lot of us that have had massive awakenings, the number one thing that we saw more than anything else that clued us into something was happening was synchronicity. And I just heard I was watching a video, somebody was talking about Carl Jung and how he described synchronicity, and it was something along the lines of God, breaking his own rules. Obviously, this was just a rule we didn't know about, which as soon as you awaken to a certain level, things start responding to you. What you think inside yourself is not the private domain you thought it was. It's actually in relationship to the external reality, and that is new for most people. Before your spiritual awakening, your inner domain is entirely your own. After spiritual awakening, your inner and external domain start lining up, and so what that means is now that private space of your inner domain is not anymore. You're back in the nakedness of, the garden, so to speak. Just metaphors. Let me have them. So I've been thinking about synchronicity because synchronicity increases and decreases based on how much spiritual expansion is actually in the field, in your own personal field, but also the pranic activity of others can also increase synchronicities for you. So you might not have had a full awakening, but things are kind of weird, and you're noticing things, and the numbers are showing up, and you might have a sense of feeling like you're being watched or targeted, noticed by something, but you're not sure what. The private domain no longer feels private. And some of that is just the extra, that activity of spiritual forces of awakened people. So even unawakened people can have more spiritual experiences due to being in the presence of people who are experiencing a lot of that expanded consciousness states. It's like a little bit of light gets added to the layers of everything that is normally pretty, subdued. And it can be really frightening. I think a lot of people have strange reactions to it. Most people just brush it off like it is nothing. You can give me 500 coincidences and I'm going to call every single one of them a coincidence. Some people are never going to change their opinion on that. Other people are going to think they're crazy, and they're going to go to the doctor and they're going to get drugs so that they have some control over this sense of being interacted with. They want to go back to their private domain, and that chemical loop will do that. They will be back in their private chemical domain. They will not be resonating with the larger collective quantum field the way those of us who are awakened are vibrating that way and interacting that way and expanded that way. There's like 10 million things I want to talk about right now. It's right before a full moon, and there's so many layers that it would be really awesome if they got cleared, but I'm just going to stick to the synchronicity one because I think it freaks a lot of people out. And not just the person who's had the awakening, but all the people around him. So I was watching this guy who, the Autistic Mystic is his name. I like him. Watch him a few times. He does tarot. And he's a fun character to watch. He has a nice way to transmit information that you can tell is not local. And it's nice when people are able to transmit non-local information without too much of their own agenda in there, and it comes out a little bit more pure, and he's able to do that better than other people. And you can tell by the number of followers he has, that people notice this about him. Back in the day, this side note, Back in the day, in order to deliver this non-local information from consciousness, like you had to actually be good at it. You could not buy a marketing team to tell everyone that you were good at delivering spiritual information. You actually had to give good spiritual information that only a person who had this hidden inside of themselves, not receiving the feedback from the external reality, no one else was going to know it. Now, with technology being what it is, that word of mouth thing, where only the people who are really doing that purely, you just got to know how to get inside people's heads enough. And now, everybody and their grandma is a psychic. And yeah, polluted the waters a little bit. So back to Austin, the Autistic Mystic. He put out a couple of videos trying to describe the many layers of synchronicity and spiritual revelation that he has experienced. And because of the nature of spiritual revelation is largely personal, and that's how you begin to understand the local versus non-local layers and fields of consciousness. It was really interesting to listen to. Number one, I've had a lot of the same experiences that he was talking about, so it was nice to have that feedback. I was like, thank you. And I noticed a lot of comments saying the same. Like, oh, yep, I thought I was Jesus once. Oh, yeah, I thought I was Mary Magdalene once. I think people, you tune into these frequencies of collective knowing about the archetypes. And it helps you to understand a relationship you have with the divine and the desire to do for the divine. And a lot of these relationships, they're, kind of standard baseline levels of interaction, between divine and humanity that we tap into once we awaken, and our consciousness is not just localized anymore, but non-local. There's still like a layer of locality to it, of what you know. Now you have to deal with all those stories you've been told, and some capacity your consciousness continues expanding through them. Consciousness is a matter of I am. It's a matter of logos, and it expands as far as need be, and hopefully, to the grand poobah. So he's describing Mary Magdalene, and the Magdalene frequency, and how the book showed up in his life. He's talking about a girl he knew who seemed to be a reincarnated or past life version of this other girl he knew, and how that there was this weird time traveling paradoxical reincarnation thing happening. And I've had similar experiences like that myself, so it made total sense to me. A bunch of stuff he said, because I've had similar experiences, made total sense to me. I was shocked that he was saying it out loud, because I still wrestle with the tiniest little things to share publicly, or even to people that are close to me. So really awesome that he tried to explain this strange revelatory synchronicity that is so profound. Really, it's a profound, weird thing. It's like waking up to realize you're a character in a story. It's like that video game movie that I can't remember his name. No, I can see his face, can't remember his name. Video game character, came alive. Became sentient in the game. It is kind of like that for a second, but obviously not completely. And but it's a strange feeling, and with it, I guess part of why I wanted to comment on it, in his comment section, there was the people who were like, oh yes, I've had this experience. And there was also the people like, I'm really concerned for you. You've lost touch with reality. You need to go see a doctor immediately. Now, this is a guy who has been able to tap into something that over 300,000 people subscribe to his channel and listen to what he has to say. They, you know, his wait list is full for people who want readings from him. Is that person so mentally unstable as to need to go be put on medication? It's weird, the reactions that people have. And I don't know what it will, I don't know when that will ever lessen to the point where we can have both and, right? It's the both and. It's the local and the non-local. They are existing together. It's not one or the other. And the way that the non-local shows up is individualized still, but not internal. It's shared. It's shared space. But the meaning is it's a communication that's happening. This is not a dead reality outside of us. It's not like we're alive and everything else is dead. And I think that's kind of how we were taught, and that isn't the case. And you have to get used to it. It's a bit jarring at first. The sensations you feel when you walk certain places, when you go certain places, a new level of intuitiveness and understanding and connections might be made that you didn't have before because you weren't in the frequency, you weren't in the vibes of it. Yeah. Interesting stuff, for sure. And I think a little bit the way that these synchronicity shows up, it's like a coaxing of the soul to bloom, to come into bloom, to be in that light of consciousness that informs. All of reality wants to communicate with all of reality. It wants to. It wants to. That's part of the deal. I kind of lost my train of thought. I can't remember what else I wanted to say. I was trying to talk about the Autistic Mystic and all these strange experiences he's having. Well, one of the things he said, I guess, was like a little bit of the paranoia. So simultaneous to people kind of like, oh no, you have gone to a level that we know what that is. That's crazy town. You're talking about non-local space in a local way. Now you're in crazy town. No. No. Can't allow that. So simultaneous to that are the experiences of feeling suddenly watched, feeling a bit of a presence that wasn't there previous, feeling a bit targeted, a bit hunted, a bit messed with, like you suddenly entered into experimental space where your actions are being heavily monitored, but you can't tell by what. And it happens simultaneous to this expanded state. It's like, hidden within that expanded state, or, always there, but we don't notice it because we're not in an expanded state previously. But it's that little encapsulated portion of the experience, the non-local experience, that gets people in trouble because they notice that, why do I feel watched suddenly? And simultaneously they're making connections where real hard to make those connections for other people because it's revelatory to your inner sanctum, your inner, what message do I need to know that reality hears me, is not the same thing, not the same message that you need. So we can have symbols like hummingbird might mean the same thing to us, but it might not. Magdalene might mean the same thing to us, but also maybe not. That non-local space is the communication, but the communication is still personal. It's really hard to describe. And so in that, people will get a little paranoid, like, why does it feel like the tree is talking to me? And then coupled with that, they might, like, all their ancestors might have been just hanging out waiting for them to, like, wake up the tiniest little bit. So go tell your mom I love her. I've been waiting for you for 10 years. Just go tell your mom I love her. Like, where's that coming from? You know, why is the wall talking to me? It's your grandma. Non-local consciousness. It's full. And just one little encapsulated piece of that is this weird kind of, what's the intention? And are they going to be a portal for shit we don't want coming into this reality? And it can cause people to get really paranoid. Like, oh, I'm targeted and there's a car outside my door. And it's been parked over there. I've had the instance with the, you know, the black sedan, the black SUVs and the blacked out windows. It's like a, you know, rite of passage for stepping into expanded consciousness. Some of that stuff is so deeply, just like a record player. It's an automatic process, and it doesn't. Don't pay too much attention to it. Let it be the encapsulated little thing over here, because the force of goodness and love and joy and beauty and peace and health on earth is actually still everything that it always was. So good to care for each other, not good to decide whether the people get to perceive as meaningful and messages from the divine, because given enough time you actually work through all of it, and it kind of like, it's like the first time you see a bird, you know, if you only got to see a bird twice in your whole lifetime, you would wonder what the hell a bird was, and you might be as scared of them. We see birds all the time, so it's like, okay, you get used to them after a while, right? That's just the things that come every spring and leave every fall, like clockwork. And the same is true in these spiritual realms. There is more cycle to it, and more contracted and expanded states that go between this larger enlightenment process of the solar system and all that. I hope I said something of value for you. Please feel free to leave any comments below. If you haven't checked out the Autistic Mystic, it was an interesting video worth seeing, the one about the Magdalene frequency. I think he said something like, I found heaven, or I shifted, or something to that effect. But I resonated, I got it. I'm glad that he said it out loud, because we can get really traumatized in those moments of trying to say, like, hey, reality is not acting like it used to, and trying to figure it out, and people making it into something that ought to be not happening. Okay, later.